up, everyone? It's Dr. Glenn Vo. I am super excited to have Dr. Avi back. And before we get into it, I want to ask everyone this question. What's the hardest thing about implementing sleep dentistry in your practice? Is it the clinical or is it getting paid? Dr. Avi, what is the biggest problem for most doctors when they're trying to implement that?
So we definitely know it's not the clinical, right? Okay, so this is the good news about the clinical part of sleep or sleep apnea. You knew how to do this when you were a junior in dental school. Back when we all used to take mad impressions on each other. I always tell this when I had the sweetest student who was my partner in the let's take alginates on each other exercise, and the worst impression taker. She kept taking impressions, bringing it to the instructor, and it's bad. So we know the clinical is easy, right? If you know how to take an impression and a bite registration, you can do an appliance. Question is, why aren't you doing appliances? And, we run into the same stories over and over, which is, I went to a sleep course, I went back home, got excited, treated 3 patients, didn't get paid for any, quit. Heard that one before, right? I hear that story all the time. And the reality is when a dentist comes off of just a small weekend course, excited for it and not necessarily understanding what to do with it, it becomes tougher to get paid.
Well, and the thing is that you left out a big one here, spent a bunch of money to get trained too, clinically, and not getting paid. Now, why is it like, why is it so complicated? It's, again, I see so many people, they buy all this equipment. They take all these courses. I see them posting on social media, and then I have a buy-sell group for dental equipment, and then I see these same people selling all their equipment because they couldn't do it. But it's like, why is it so hard to get paid? And again, get paid with medical. It seems like it's like almost a unicorn concept, right? Like it's like you know it's there, but no one's ever actually seen it done.
Yes, and so I'll tell you really about it. I mean, we didn't get trained on medical insurance dental school. We didn't get trained on dental insurance either, but that was pretty easy. You have Dentrix, you click batch claims, they go, somehow they get paid, right? On occasion, they'll ask you for some supporting documentation. They send in your x-rays, but for sleep, unless you really know the process, and I mean, know the whole process, the process is not take an impression and a bite registration and insert. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
We call that step 27, right? So it means you had to go through all these other pieces to get there. And going back to your question of people spend money on equipment, I know it's a crazy notion for a dentist to buy equipment and not use it, but here they are. You'll go to a course and you get uber excited because the numbers out there are staggering in terms of patients that are available. Still on the ground level, right? Imagine this is the ground level of implants, and you got on, you'd be psyched and ready to go. Now it's obviously commonplace. This is still ground level, and I say it in a loving way. The process itself is not taught.
Yeah.
You got to go back from a course and really understand the steps that need to be taken in order to get paid, right? How is it that you have a patient sitting there that you're going to take it, submit to insurance, and get paid on it? Once you know and master that process, this world becomes your oyster.
The thing is that there's so many courses out there, right? Let's just lay it out. We're not going to mention any by names, okay? So there's the hybrid course where it's like, okay, we're going to teach you a whole bunch of clinical, and then for the last hour, you're going to learn how to bill.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Like 1 hour or maybe like half a day on just trying to figure out how to get paid.
This is the norm, right? You go to a course. So the first sleep course I took was 1999. Similar to what you just said. Science. So science all day Friday, science Saturday morning. We had a hands-on with a specific appliance. Back then for me, it was the tap. That's what I learned on. And then billing and marketing happened. Right? This was the billing and marketing. I'm going to save you a lot of money right now. Here was the billing and marketing course. Go out, build up your reputation, and start talking to people. They'll start sending you patients, and you'll submit it with this code, and you'll get paid. And then dentists do that. They go out. First up, they have a difficulty getting patients sent to them.
Oh, yeah.
And then if they do, they have a difficulty getting paid because it's not as simple as just submitting, right? If you go and you learn science and you learn billing and marketing, you're going to call me and say, hey, I came back home, saw 3 patients, and quit because I didn't get paid. And yet there's this intriguing notion out there because if you can crack this nut, this changes your life. It changed mine drastically.
And let's talk about that before we get into the courses that your organization does, right? Let's talk about your journey. So
How long you got?
So obviously, you talked about where you started your journey and you had those frustrations, and then you figured it out, right? You figured it out, and then you were able to create a business where you're just focused on sleep. So talk about like when you made that transition,
Sure.
why you made that transition, and how were you doing in that new practice?
You got it. So, I mean, I graduated in 98 from NYU and treated my first sleep patient week 1. Week
Wow.
1 was my first sleep patient, which was kind of cool. I got to treat a patient right away. I actually got paid for it just by being really persistent with the insurance company. And there was no code back then for an oral appliance either, so more difficult. But I did and got paid for it, and then said, wow, this is pretty cool. This thing actually works. It worked for the patient. I can get paid for these. Let's just figure out a way for us to get more. And then I spent the next 10 years with that same frustrating journey everybody else did. I got a patient here or there. I barely got paid for him.
Yeah.
It wasn't until, figure out the year, 2009 that I decided to get really serious. And here's what I mean by really serious, because for that 10-year journey, I took every sleep course you could think of. They were all the same, by the way. Science.
A little bit of marketing, a little bit of...
A little bit. I just gave you the marketing and billing course, right? And that's the spoiler. And then some sale, right? Equipment, software, an appliance, whatever it might be. And I would always ask this question of the lecturers, hey, how many patients are you treating? Because I was going to specifically learn how to make this into a business.
Yeah.
And the answers from the lecturers were they were seeing the same amount I was, 3 patients a month, 4. I'm like, hey, you're the experts here. You're seeing 3, 4 patients. How do I get to see more? Spend your time, build up your reputation. That's not necessarily a great business plan. So just rely on others. Figure out a way to do it. So in 2009 is when they introduced the code for oral appliances, specifically E0486. And it gave us an easier path to getting paid because now at least we had a code that was specifically for an oral appliance. Now let's figure out the rules. Let's figure out what the insurance companies really want in order for you to get paid. I don't know that dentists do this, but if you're going to do an oral appliance, shouldn't you know what that insurance company wants? Yeah. Right? If you're going to submit for anything in the dental world, you know what they're looking for.
Yeah,
it's easy, right? We know simple things are just going to pay like that. Right? We know that more complex, you got to submit supporting documentation. The supporting documentation that is needed for this to get paid reliably, unless you're fully in control of this process, you'll never even get all the documents you need to get paid.
Wow.
So what I did during that time from 2009 to 2011 was rack my head against the wall a lot because it got really frustrating. There wasn't a path, even though I was really determined to figure one out, which was, hey, how could I get patients? How could I get paid? Let's first figure out the first part. How are we going to get patients? This isn't a simple, somebody's going to refer you patients.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm sure spoken to a lot of people. Do you know anybody who's just getting so flooded with referrals they don't know what to do? Right? There's a reason for it. Okay, I say this with love to you prosthodontists. Imagine that a prosthodontist walks into any GP's practice. Says, listen, I've spent 4 years working on my skills here, and you got to see my preps. They're incredible, and my margins are the best you've ever seen. I would like you to send me all of your single unit crowns. Right? So you laugh. Because if a prosthodontist came with that to my office, I'd say, hey, get out of my office. Don't ever come back again. That's silly. That's how I make a living. Why would I do that? When you go to a sleep doctor and you ask them for mild to moderate patients being sent to you, which are the ones that you can really treat first as a dentist, you're asking the sleep doctor for their single unit crowns.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, get out of my office. Don't come back. I'll send you my CPAP rejects, maybe. And I'll send you the patients that are so mild that you won't even get paid. And that was really life. So how did you figure out the way to get in patients? And that's where the story really then takes on a whole nother level, where I spent a lot of time and effort working with doctors' offices, insurance, sleep labs, hospitals, trying to figure out, hey, how are we going to get everybody here to be committed to the same thing? Let's get patients screened. Let's get patients tested. Let's get them diagnosed and treated. And let's go to town here. And that was really the journey from 2009 to 2011, figuring that part out.
And so let's talk about the actual, having a practice focus on helping patients with sleep apnea. Because again, we hear people, I have the practice that's just for this. I'm not doing those class 2 fillings. I'm not doing, and it's like that unicorn concept. Like, wow, that sounds great.
Sure.
Like,
I'm in.
Like who actually does it? Because these people who say they do it, I see them still doing like crown preps and stuff like that.
Of course.
Your students who worked with you, do any of them right now focus on practices with just doing sleep apnea?
It's 50%, by the way. And here's the gist of it. Other than a few who were associates that this became their first business, 50% of our members of IAOS, their goal was, let me sell my practice and concentrate on sleep only. So it's 50% of about the 260 or so odd members that we have that do sleep only, but really have a business. This isn't a business where you can just put up a sign that says sleep dentist and now you're busy. You can put up that sign all you want. Unless you have an actual business plan, it doesn't really work.
And again, I wanted to bring that up because people who are watching right now, they're thinking, well, Dr. Avi can do it. Of course, this dude's been doing it for a while. We want to know the people that he trained are actually doing it. So you said 50%. But again, it's not so much of, hey, I know how to do it. Hey, I listened to a little bit of marketing. I did a little bit, and then voila, I have this practice. Yes. There's actually systems. So let's get into that.
The nitty gritty.
The nitty gritty. So basically, your program, okay? Now it's not a weekend program. Like, you are very upfront with it.
It starts off as you got to come to the weekend course just so you can understand what you're getting into.
Yeah. So let's talk about that weekend course, and then let's kind of go into, well, what it's really going to take. Because look, he's not going to do the work for you guys. I mean, as much as you probably want, you're going to have to put a little ownership in there. So let's talk about from the weekend course to the actual program. Let's go from there.
All right, so quick little snippet here on what a weekend course is. I'm going to ask this question right at the beginning of this course. How many of you want a business that sees 20 appliances or more every month? You get paid for all of them. Let's call it an average reimbursement of $3,500 or so. How many want that business, right? All the hands go, me, I want that business. I said, okay, now I'm going to teach you exactly what you need to do to build that business. And I'm going to ask the question at the end of this course, which is the following. Now that you know what you need to do, how many of you are willing to do it? Right? And it's not 100%. It's 40 to 50% of the room says, me, I want to do that still, even though we're going to go through every step. Because I'm going to say one thing right off the top of that. Biggest mistake dentists make, put this in as an extra procedure to what you do. The typical dental website, which you've seen, right? It's a picture of the dentist with their family and meet our team. And here's Jane and here's Jill. And then here's a list of services we do. You name it, we do it, right? And here, it's third from the bottom, says sleep apnea. So when you do this as an extra procedure, you're not really going to get very far.
You're not all in.
Yeah, you're not all in, and B, you're limiting actually how you can get paid. So this was a kind of a crazy story. I was Avi Weisfogel, DDS, working in Old Bridge, New Jersey, submitted an appliance case on an executive from Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson's right near my office. And I'll tell you a quick story on how I became the dentist for the executives. A female executive from J&J brought her kids into my office. It's the old, let them experiment with my kids first.
Yeah.
I was a young dentist, maybe 26 or 27. And I say this with love also. Would you ever send your patients to you your first week as a dentist? I wouldn't. I maybe 5 years in. But anyways, her son comes in. He didn't like the dentist much, and he pukes into the bowl. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry about that. I'm like, hey, don't be sorry. Here's a rag. Clean that stuff up. And she thought this was so funny that I said, I'm not touching your kid's puke, that she actually referred every J&J exec to my office just because I didn't like vomit. That being said, I treated a bunch of them for oral appliances and was getting paid from Aetna, let's call it $1,700. Okay, my fee was $6,500. I was getting paid $1,700 for these cases. When I got serious about this business and built Sleep as a separate business, which is known as a DME, Durable Medical Equipment Company, and started billing out that way, same guy, same place, same exact insurance, I got paid full fee, which was really nuts. I'm like, because I was expecting the $1,700 and I got paid full fee of whatever, it was $6,750 or something like that. I'm like, wow, what just happened here? The only difference was the billing entity was not Avi Weisfogel DDS, but rather our DME company at the time, which was one of many that we started to build. A DME company specifically designed to do sleep appliances was looked at as a specialist and started getting paid properly. So that's first little snippet number one. Do this as a separate business, right? Because when you do, A, you're going to get paid the max, and B, you're also going to be able to sell it at a whole different level than practices.
Wow. I mean, hey, look. Free tip right there, right? But again, going through
one of 1,000.
Again, going through the weekend course, really it's just to figure out who wants to be all in, right? And also kind of
looking for those serious peeps,
right? Because here's the thing, a lot of people. I mean, if you have done sleep training, it's not cheap. I mean, we're here at the dental festival. There's a couple other vendors, and they're charging thousands upon thousands of dollars to get started here. So if you're going to invest that money, you're kind of in, right? And so again, if you're not all in, you're just kind of like doing it halfway, and that's it there. So let's go into the course. Let's go into the program, because again, you have a weekend course. It's not another weekend. It's actually pretty extensive. So kind of talk about that, like a highlights of it.
So here's what it is. I told you what my sleep course experience was. I was going to these courses, a lot of science. They were the same.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? The science is pretty easy. It didn't change. Why don't we just focus in on the basics? Because you know what happens when you start learning all this extra? I mean, in reality, how much do you use in your practices from biochem? Was it zero, right? Pretty much zero. Yeah. And zero from histology. And really, I mean, that stuff didn't. So the science itself is overkill.
Yeah.
You know how much you really need? An hour and a half of science. Let's do this basic science course where you now know the gist. Okay. So now we're going to do that for an hour and a half, and we'll teach you appliances for an hour also. But we got a 2 or 2.5 day course. We're now going to focus on the business. We're going to focus on how to build the business. Literally, we go through it step by step, exactly how we build and run the businesses to be able to see as many patients as you want. And that's the key, right? If you can create your own patients. I used to do a lot of marketing for full mouth rehabs and implants, which was great, because you'd put out an ad, it would strike a chord with someone, they'd come in, give them 3 options, they pick the one in the middle, go to town, right? With sleep, it wasn't working. I would get patients in, I'd send them out to a sleep doctor, never see them again. Sleep marketing, for me at least, didn't really work.
Yeah.
On the other hand, how was it that we were going to figure out how to run a business where we could create patients? And that became the journey, learning how to create patients. This is really what you're going to learn at that 2-day course. You'll learn how to be the person in charge of creating patients. You know, where do people go for sleep patients? I mean, you've treated a few in your day. Where do they come from? Are they your practice? Referrals?
You know, most of the time, I mean, it's within your practice, you know. So within my practice, referrals from other doctors, no, that rarely happens. Yeah, literally, like why would they send it to me, right? And if they're sending me someone, it's someone I don't want to see. I'm looking to send it to someone else.
Let's pass the. Yeah, don't you wish that one day we created this full list of the dental blacklist of patients, so everybody know, hey, don't touch that guy. He's that guy that's going to be on your day. And it's like, oh no, we got a long one ahead of us here. But yeah, so they do kind of come from your practice, but it's a limited amount.
Yeah.
You know, even if you got to treat every one of your patients, which I doubt you will, because there's a lot of steps that go into that even. Yeah, I was screening patients actively, sending them to the sleep doc, and then I'd never see them.
Yeah.
They'd go into a CPAP, and I honestly started losing dental patients because of
the sleep doctor's like, thank you so much,
yeah,
Dr. Avi. Yeah, I'll keep this patient.
By the way, you say that. I don't even think they knew they came from me. You know, these guys are busy. They're not looking, hey, where did this patient come from? It's just, all right, I'm busy seeing my patients, doing my thing. You got sleep apnea, we'll put you in a CPAP. Great. Appliances did not get mentioned unless the patient themselves were a proponent and going into it and saying, hey, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Right? So we didn't see that happening. We actually started working this in a different way, thinking, okay, if my patient pool, let's say I had 2,000 active patients. Let's say I was the world's greatest. My team was great. I was great. Everything was great. I had every step put in. What am I going to treat? 5% of my patients? So what does that come out to out of 2,100 patients, right? I wanted to see 100 patients a month. Wow. That was my goal. And we way eclipsed it, but it had to be with, let's go find where the patients are. Sure, there's patients sitting in the sleep doc's office, but I know they're having a difficult problem getting patients too. Where are the patients coming from? Are they coming from GPs? Are they coming from cardiology, internists? Where should they be coming from? Here's one thing every sleep apnea patient has in common. Left untreated, you're going to the cardiologist, given, right? So it doesn't matter who you are. If you are a sleep apnea patient and you're not treated, you're going to be at the cardiologist's office. That's where we started. Was going to cardiologists and saying, hey, you have sleep apnea patients. Let's figure out a way to get them screened and tested. Right? Now, if you found a doctor who was really passionate and really cared and really believed into it, then you'd get some patients from there. Again, still not enough to hit my goals of at least 100 patients. We had to figure out a way to get that guy, the cardiologist, really involved. And we spoke the universal language of what's in it for me. And when we started talking to the cardiologist, I'm like, what do you want to get from this? Revenue would be nice. Okay, let's start figuring out ways we could get actual revenue in a legal manner for a cardiologist. Don't try this at home, kids, because there are so many legalities that go into it. You don't want to just do it haphazardly. Come to the weekend course, listen to the legalities, then you can go for it. But even then, if we could figure out a way for the doctor to make money, and I'll give you a little spoiler, doctors make money off of home sleep testing. Right? That's where they can make their money, $250 or so per test. And if you're a doctor who doesn't have that piece of revenue and you do 2 tests a day and you're profiting $100, $150, it's a $50,000 to $75,000 profit for something that's just sitting in their waiting room. Right? Imagine you had all these patients, half of your patients were eligible for some procedure in dentistry you didn't know about. Someone told you about it, you do it on everyone. Right? That's just kind of the way this works. So we started working on that specifically, the legalities of how can we get these doctors to profit from home sleep tests in a program that we're kind of running for them. And that is really what we teach. And we teach it over and over again. So at the end of this 2-day course, you're going to know exactly how to approach doctors, how to sell them on this concept, how they make money legally, how you make money, and more importantly, how you're in control of the whole process. So patients get screened, tested, diagnosed, and it's your company that's kind of driving them towards treatment.
So, let's quickly talk about, again, you kind of shared with some success with some of your students, 50% who actually just kind of transitioned just doing sleep.
Yep.
Let's do a couple of cases here. Tell us some docs who like how many patients are they seeing? Did they transition over? And then let's talk a little bit about revenue. And we don't have to mention any names, but just lay out a couple of cases.
I'll mention some names if you really want me to, anyways, because we have advertising pieces.
Let's do it. Let's talk. And then maybe at some of these events, maybe some of the attendees might meet some of these guys, right? Some of these guys.
Very likely.
Okay.
Listen. So I'm going to give you the beginnings of International Academy of Sleep. This was our team, and I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of when you start, you got a lean team. This was your lean team at the beginning. This was the marketing team, right? So we'd market, dentists would call the office, they'd get on the phone with me, I'd convince them to come to the course. Step one, now they're at a course. Now I taught the whole course, 2.5 days, which is exhausting, by the way. Not many things are more tiring than giving a full day lecture. It's a tiring one.
Oh, yeah.
2 hours is plenty, but a full day was pretty tiring for me. So I try not to do that if I don't have to. But, I was then gave the lectures, and then we would sell our program of, hey, do you want to do this? Let me walk you through this. Because imagine you had this ability. Imagine after dental school, you had a great dentist businessman. I know the concept's crazy, but there are a couple out there. But a great dentist businessman who held your hand and say, here's how I want you to start your practice. Yeah. You're going to avoid all the mistakes I made. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to walk you through so your team dynamics are going to be great. I'm going to show you the ins and outs so you don't need to screw up the way I screwed up. And because that is the typical dental practice, right? You go in, you don't have business experience, figure it out for yourself. I love that dental business plan. I'm going to put myself as the dentist in the role of dentist. I'm going to spend 35 hours in that role of my week. My working week is the dentist. I'm going to surround myself, no offense again, with $15 to $20 an hour employees who are going to run my business for me. They get paid. I'll keep the rest. You've heard that point before, right? So we know that in sleep, that certainly isn't going to work. You got to train your team properly, and you got to be the one leading the charge here. So we do end up teaching that piece, and we taught it to people who took it and ran with it to the point where, because I was doing so much, I couldn't do the active coaching anymore.
Yeah. Because
by the time I got them sold on going to the course, coming to the course, at the course, sold on the concept of working with us, and then getting them through financing, the last thing I wanted to do was probably coach them afterwards, because it was a long process. Maybe from the course till when they started, 2-3 months of going through financing was a pain in the butt. So I started to have successful members become the coaches of, and here were the rules. In order to become a coach of IAOS, you had to be seeing at least 25 patients a month, and obviously know and intimate with the system that we teach. You got to know it and teach it from a universal standpoint where we go through everything that is really conservative. We find the rules and we just follow them to the extreme. This is where people tend to say, oh, I hate these rules. They should make it easier for dentists to do this. I say, why? If you look at somebody or some business that has a ton of obstacles, most will see this and run, and we see it as opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. So you get to meet people who are doing 20, 50, 100. There's extremes. Obviously, we have people that have sleep businesses that do multi-millions of dollars. Right. So the highest one, I think, has an $8 million sleep only business. Now that's a guy who has a crazy implant practice too. This is a guy who is successful at business, listens, implements systems, put them into play. Let's even go on the other end of the extreme. Somebody who kind of learns it and half-asses it a bit. What do they see compared to the average guy? 5 to 7 patients a month. So even the non-successful
5 to 7
ones,
a month is actually a lot for most people.
And so that's our not successful.
And you're saying that's the one who's not really just driving hard. But 5 to 7, and again, at the reimbursement rates that you were just talking about, that's significant to your practice. So if you're someone who, you think you're just going to dabble it 5 to 7, that's huge.
If you do 2 a month, this system, you're profitable. So at 2 a month, you're profitable. Your third and on is full on profit. And obviously when you start getting bigger, you could kind of do whatever you want. So here's what we found. The dental world and people buying dental practices, people putting groups of practices together, people doing DSOs, selling to DSOs, right? You know and understand that world. We met a lot of people who were on that path, right? Where they owned 4 or 5 dental practices, saw this as a great opportunity. These were the entrepreneurial guys. And once they built their first successful sleep business and kept going, because sleep is different than dentistry. Here's what you're not going to make. Here's what's not going to happen in your sleep practice. You're not going to profit month 1 or month 2 or month 3. It's really till month 4, 5, and 6 you start profiting. So you got to be able to willing to make it through a period where you're laying out cash, not making money. That is, by the way, most businesses. I always thought that was strange with dental practices. I would buy a dental practice, I'd open it, somebody else's practice, buy it, and day 1 I was profitable. You know why that is, right? Those practices were so underpriced, which is why corporate has come in the way they have and said, hey, these practices are selling for pennies on the dollar. Let's give 2 pennies, and there's still a bargain. And so that system doesn't work in sleep. You got to know and understand that. So the people who make it through that beginning saw the opportunity so much, they said, we're not building dental practices anymore. Look at the effort I'm putting here, 5 or 6 hours a week on the business. To build up $1 million sleep business with a take home, by the way, of at least 50%. Like if your overhead's 50% using our model, you have a high overhead. Wow. Different than dentistry. Yeah. Where if you have 50%, you're like, yes, I'm the king. I got a 50% overhead. Your overhead done right should be no higher than 30%. Wow. So $1 million sleep practice taking home 700 grand, and somebody who built up a dental practice and saw, hey, I can do this or I can do this. They started going off and building really. And we got all sorts, 5 to 7 patients, 10 to 20. 20 is our benchmark for success. And once you hit 20, we then who's
the top guy? I mean, we're excluding you.
We got a couple.
Who's the number of patients? Who's the top performer? The number of patients?
They're in the 200 plus range. Yeah. Wow. But they go for it, right? They didn't start off. In order to get to 200, you got to get to 10 first, right?
Now, how many of those practices actually now have their associate actually doing it?
Because all of them.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. This is an associate driven business.
Because the biggest thing, obviously, there's a whole, pretty much think about all the people that you know in your life, right? Pretty much someone who has some kind of obstructive sleep apnea. We all know it,
there's
right?
A given.
You can actually just
it's probably you.
Yeah, you can look at someone and say, okay, that guy for sure. You're looking at his neck, okay, that guy for sure. So the patients are out there. Right? Patients are out there. But I think the biggest thing, the most exciting thing about sleep is, you know how physical dentistry is, right? You do enough of class 2s. You just want to drop the drill and just walk out the door, right? Quadrant dentistry, just doing a little bit here and there.
Hey, you're giving me hives over here.
So let's talk about,
take me back to my old days.
So let's talk about, actually implementing sleep and how that could actually, look, we know the monetary thing. We've been talking about that. But how about just quality of life, like physically, some of these doctors, how did that change their quality of life physically?
So one of the guys who's here with us at Dental Festival, by the way, he's kind of living my dream, because when I did my first patient and made that profit it was essentially 1,000% profit. It cost me $350. I got paid $3,500. I'm like, wow, what if I could do one of these a day? I'm like, man, it's like a 750 grand take home. What if I had 2 days of seeing 5 patients a day? That would be pretty incredible. I probably could even do that if I just worked 2 days a month. So there's a guy here with us. That is his business. He works 2 Mondays a month. That's it. And he's in Manhattan. He gets his full fee, which is $98.50. He gets his full fee every single case. He's built up what we call that street cred with the insurance company, where they know he's not settling.
No, his practice is in Manhattan.
His practice is in Manhattan. Get this.
Okay,
so he lives in Ohio. He lives in Ohio. He sold his dental practice. His sleep business was doing so well that he sees all of the follow-ups via telemed from his little place in Ohio, comes to New York for 2 Mondays a month, sees either 5 or 7 patients, never 6. It's 5 or 7. Don't ask me why. And he gets paid his full fee. You can do the math on this. At essentially 10 grand a case, he's doing 2 days a month, and that's like living the dream.
Wow, I love that. Okay, so for those who are interested and they're like, okay, you know what? I want to come to the weekend course. I want to see what this is all about. And again, the whole point of the weekend course is to show you what's possible, to learn a few things that, hey, you can also implement. But at that point, you'll know if you want to kind of keep moving forward with this program. Again, this program, you're going to have to put a little effort into it. But if you're willing to put the work in, you heard the success stories. How do they sign up for this course? When's the next one coming up?
So we got a couple coming up. And by the way, this really depends on your style of learning. If you're someone who needs a really intimate style, small style lecture, we have a couple there we do where we have 15 dentists or so. You get your questions answered. We listen to your story, see if it makes sense for you. Those courses, because they're small and because they're intimate, it actually costs us more, believe it or not, than these large courses that we put on. So we do charge for the small courses. We have a course coming up September 9th and 10th in Vegas. You say, hey, you want to learn how to do this? The cost for that course is $0. It's free. We know it because we know that we want you and we're looking for the serious people. So people may not be willing to make that investment right away. I don't want to pay for a course. I don't want to go, oh, yes, I'm going to get CE. But is this thing real anyways? We're willing to back it up. So you can come to our course. You're going to get free breakfast and lunch, by the way. That's pretty extensive as well. And you'll get 2 full days of a course for,
and it's in Vegas,
for that amount. Right? Yeah, in Vegas. I mean, if you lose money, it's going to be your fault. It's not going to be in our group. It's going to be at the tables.
No, where is the course going to be at in Vegas? I'm just curious.
At the Venetian.
I mean, come on, guys.
Glenn's a Venetian fan.
So. I am a huge Venetian fan. You should stay there for New Year's because that's where they shoot the fireworks off. That's
it is very cool.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so we'll get all the dates and so that's going to be in Vegas.
Yeah, September 9th and 10th in Vegas. Go to IAOS.com. You can go register there. You can register for any of our courses there. You click on events, go pick the one that makes sense for you.
Now, sometimes we have some overachievers that just like, I want to ask some questions right now. I don't want to wait to the course. What's the best way to maybe get a hold of you or maybe some of the team members if they have some questions?
So I can tell you that questions eventually will make it to the right person. You can always email our team. I'll tell you that the best person to email and ask questions to happens to be here as well. She's in the back over there, Heather. It's Heather at IAOS.com. Questions can go there. And if you email her, the questions will get either she'll answer them or they'll go to the right person who will ask them. I will tell you which question does not get answered beforehand. We're giving away a course. The question of, hey, can I speak to some of your people? Yeah, come to the course, show interest in joining, and then you can speak to as many people as you want.
I mean, some of those people might be there.
About 10 of them. Yeah. And we try to bring a range, by the way. We bring some of the 5 to 7 guys who say, yeah, it's kind of me. I'm busy doing dentistry and I don't put in that much of an effort. It's on me. And then you'll get to meet the people that are doing a couple hundred and you get to meet somebody who's doing 30 and 50 and 70. It really is a personal choice on how many you see. But in the end, and this is the cool part of how we do it, how many patients you see is totally up to you.
I love it. Avi, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man. Thank you so much for jumping on. Guys, we'll have all the information in the comments section. It's in Vegas. Come on, guys.
Free, by the way.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks so much, Glenn.